This book behind me, Create, Connect, Repeat, is coming out on April 5th, just in a couple of weeks. How do you motivate yourself to keep pushing when you feel like you aren't getting any better? I don't view practicing or music in the idea that it's something that you need motivation to do. Like, it's part of a routine. So putting it into your day, your usual weekly routine, meaning like it's not a decision whether or not I'm going to practice. It's not a decision whether or not that I'm going to work on something. It's just that I am me, and something that I do is I practice, or I work on music, or I take time to spend working on my career, or that's just something that I do, and I decide beforehand. So when it comes down to it, there's no needing to get any magical motivation. Like you've already pre-decided that that's what you're going to do, and you just do it. So that's been the thing that's worked the best for me over the years, is tying it into your identity in such a way where you don't wait for that inspiration to strike, because it is very, very likely that inspiration will not strike when you need it to strike. I mean, it's so likely that you're going to just be doing something else, or something will come up or whatever, and having that mental fortitude to know that you're going to go ahead with what you decided beforehand is super critical, I think, to longevity and to making progress. So decide and just do it. It's not a matter of motivation, whether you're getting better, not getting better, whatever. What do you think the best way to start getting yourself gig is? Multiple people have told me the jam sessions are the best way to start, but my improvisation is not at the same level as my reading is. Jam sessions can be good for getting to know other musicians that want to improvise. If you want to play other sorts of gigs, then the best way to do that is to play rehearsals. So, like when I moved to New York, that's how I met most people, was playing rehearsals. So you let people let people you respect know that you're around and that you're available, and that you'll go to rehearsals for them. You'll sub for them, and just be like, yeah, I'd love to, sub for you on such and such, if you ever need a sub, that kind of thing, for rehearsals, because lots of us, especially in New York, like lots of rehearsals all the time, like being available to go and on a last minute sub a rehearsal is a great way to get to know a lot of people, especially in big bands. You get to meet a lot of people when you go into a big band setting. So go and play rehearsals, man. Going to jam sessions is great. That's one way, but that's only like one part of your playing. Going to a rehearsal, subbing in a rehearsal is going to get you way further. And get to know a lot more people. You recently posted about recording your practice sessions to get your own feedback. Do you ever apply this to teaching, i.e. record yourself teaching lessons? Obviously, yes, I have done that in the past. Like record yourself teaching so you can watch yourself teach. Yeah, that's really helpful. There was a while where if you go back on YouTube, I gave away a bunch of lessons for this exact purpose. It's basically just like behind the scenes of a lesson. Like I gave a couple people free lessons, and I recorded them so that I could see how I taught, see what I needed to improve, how I could say things differently. And then I thought it was interesting and useful. I mean, obviously jazz trombone pedagogy is a very like niche thing to want to watch on YouTube, so there's not that many views on those videos, but I think it's interesting to watch other people teach. At least, if I have the chance to go and watch somebody that I love how they play or love how they teach, watch them teach, it can be super useful. Because the one-on-one interaction is one thing, but you kind of get in the way of that, objective observation. So I also have taken to doing that. But that was a while ago now. I probably should do it more. As part of the university teaching, you get observed. So I do get feedback from time to time in that way. But yeah, I have done it before, John, to answer your question more directly. And I thought it was pretty useful and pretty interesting. Follow up. What was the takeaway from those recordings? Was there anything you directly changed because of it? One of my biggest weaknesses as a teacher is sometimes I explain things in a way that's more complicated than it needs to be. I try to explain things in multiple ways, and sometimes that ends up being more confusing than just saying one way. But it's because I've reflected on other times where I said something and it didn't connect. So knowing like which direction to come at a problem or a situation at, first. Another thing that I struggle with is thinking that I need to reinvent the wheel all the time when I'm teaching, because a lot of the times, and if you're an educator, if you teach lessons or at any level, it's a lot of the same stuff between students, the same things on an ongoing basis with a single student, yourself. It's the same problems or the same inefficiencies or the same deficiencies, I suppose, all of those things. And you have to find a way to, say the same things over and over again. That's kind of like hard sometimes because you get stuck thinking like, oh, I need to like reinvent the wheel or explain it a different way, or they're not getting it, so it must be something wrong with how I'm explaining it. Any advice for changing embouchure? Recently did a brass band tour with a cut on my inner upper lip, and now I have a scar that's completely affected how I play. I try to listen to my body. How your body wants to naturally solve that problem is likely the best case. And except if it's the case that it's like making you play sideways or like totally like use too much pressure and things like that. The main thing that I've focused on with my embouchure or changing or not changing my embouchure has always been reducing movement. So that's meant kind of like evening it out. Like if I went down for some notes, angled down or angled up, I tried to kind of like find a happy medium and get like a stronger upper register and lower register from the opposite like set, if you will. I'm kind of a person that tries to not move. I've never rebuilt my embouchure from like a new place, but I would try to go with whatever feels comfortable. You're talking about knowing your weaknesses as an educator, like that I know is not some like a part of pedagogy that I really have dove deep on. I'm better at teaching improvisation and things like that than I am at like teaching about moving an embouchure or rebuilding an embouchure or changing your embouchure. I'm definitely a kind of a person. I feel like you've got to harness your natural tendencies into a relaxed way of playing that allows you to get the results that you want. So sometimes you got to find. Sometimes you need that rebuilding, or you need that person that can really like tell you how to change your embouchure to get the results. Because there are ways, to change the amount of upper lip to lower lip, the angle, the airflow angle. All these different things are definitely like totally important, especially if you're trying to change something. But when I was in college, I had kind of a negative experience watching a few people try to change their embouchure, and it ruined them forever. So I hardly ever recommend someone to change their embouchure unless it's a real problem. Like they're doing something that's going to negatively affect them, or it is not allowing them to do what they would need to do or want to do on the horn. But I watched too many people try to change, and it just like wrecked them. I really think it just stems from a lack of playing relaxed and putting too much tension and pressure. It eventually catches up with you. You just have to play in a natural way, is whatever that means for you. And that's why I don't stick to one particular pedagogy, which maybe that's also a weakness. Like I don't have a particular way. You need to play the trombone like this. True, there are best practices, but I view them as best practices, not as the only way to play. I'm going to play through and try to get good at all of the Arbans characteristic studies, and I'm going to try to get more exercises out of the Arbans book to use in my education. We were talking about teaching, in my teaching, because I feel like that's a book none of my teachers ever really used, and I feel like there's a lot of things in there that I want to like incorporate and get better at using. So I'm going to go through it this summer. I mean, I always have played and had a lot of students play characteristic study number 1, at least the first half of it, mostly because Wycliffe used to assign that as well. Take it through the keys. I'm trying to give myself some like specific trombone related goals, because I haven't really had too many like trombone technique playing wise, and I just feel like I've been stuck a little bit in like not like a rut, but just kind of stuck in like similar sort of way of playing for like a long time, and I'm sick of it. Meaning that just like I feel like there's more to explore, and I just want to put in that effort and that time. Not next week, but in 2 weeks at this time, on April the 5th, we'll be talking all about Create, Connect, Repeat, which is music business book that I wrote. I guess I wrote it during the pandemic pretty much, but stuff I've been thinking about for a long time that I use with the label, production company, Outside in Music, and just a way of focusing on building up a music career that is not reliant on anybody else and is not reliant on Instagram or Facebook or any TikTok or whatever new platforms come our way, but thinking in a holistic audience development view of creating a life in music and not just like hopping from gig to gig to gig. And, something that I think about a lot, I've been seeing really established musicians, and it's like two things that happen. One is that something will happen to them, and then all of a sudden we have to do a fundraiser because they haven't been recognized in their time, like they have no money for a medical bill that comes up, which is ridiculous because they are such an amazing musician. There's no reason that they should be living in such a way where they can't pay for a medical bill, And so for me, that's only more reason to focus on now, like building something, building up a career that allows you to have a life, and not just be dependent on the next gig. People don't think about how everything ties together to build a career that's more big picture thinking, long-term thinking. Everyone thinks, I'm going to make my debut record and I'm going to put it out and it's going to be a big splash. Well, I'll tell you what, my debut record came out and it did not make a big splash. Like it took 5 records before anything started to happen, in terms of, well, not 5, maybe 3 or 4 before like people started to, want me to do things, or before I got a teaching job or different things like that. So it's long term. Anyone that's going to like make a huge splash with their first release is like someone who already has like this hidden momentum behind them. If you're like starting from scratch and doing your first release, like you're creating that. Do you have a PhD? No, I do not. No PhD. No DMA. I have a master's from Juilliard and a bachelor's from Eastman School of Music. No PhD. That's not in the cards for me. No PhD for me. A lot of universities will require a PhD or a DMA, but thankfully for me, and in the music area, there's some room for taking professional experience into account in addition to your academic qualifications or whatever you want to call them. Because music is just kind of a strange thing within the larger university system. Like as you can imagine, it doesn't fit in quite as neatly to, researching and writing papers and things like that. Although people do. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with all of you today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll catch up with you soon. Have a good one.